I love my new job. and I just want to congratulate Kip on following the very first axiom I ever learned in politics, which is to get a room too small. I just wanted to announce that I'm running for the Arlington County Board. Seriously, I've come to so many ACDC meetings in the last year and been always so impressed that Jay and Mary would come, and I'm sure chairs before, and talk about everything that was going on in City County Board and what was happening. So I thought I'd give you the brief update on the first 4 weeks in the U.S. Congress. I've never been on the losing side of so many votes in my entire life. You know, when I was lieutenant governor, I only got to vote when it was a tie. So I was on the winning side every single time. And it's been really, well, it's not quite what I expected. I mean, the first week, we got to vote against the Republican bill to change the Obamacare 30 hours to 40 hours. So if you just cut a person's employment by 1 hour a week, go home at 4 o'clock on Friday, they would not then qualify for the Affordable Care Act. The second week was Keystone, which I voted against proudly. The third week was packing 4 bills to completely defund every part of the President's immigration reform agenda attached to the Homeland Security bills. The good news was that there were Republicans who defected, not enough, but we got pretty close, especially on DACA. The fourth week was the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act, which again we voted, actually we were lucky because there were 30 Republicans, led by Republican women, who said, we're not going to vote for this. And they pulled it at the last minute and did a different, less bad anti-choice bill. And then yesterday we got to vote on the 56th successful attempt to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. And it's been pretty discouraging. However, I do believe that you go there to represent your values. I go there to represent your values. And in a Senate or in a House where we have as few Democrats since 1947, Harry Truman was president, we are going to be playing defense an awful, awful lot. There are a lot of ways to play offense too, though. I am going to be on the Science, Space, and Technology Committee, which is perfect for Northern Virginia in so many different ways. And I'm going to be on the Natural Resources Committee also. And as many of you know, the centerpiece of my hopes and my passion and campaign for the seat was to be the strongest, clearest voice to fight climate change that I could be. And these are probably 2 of the 3 best committees for doing that. We actually had one small victory last week, the first meeting of the Natural Resources Committee, and they rolled out their oversight agenda, the things they were going to provide oversight on. And we offered an amendment that said, climate change is serious, it's destroying the world, it's man-made, and we're going to use the resources of the committee to fight it. And they said, as long as you take out the man-made part, we'll include it. So, it's crazy, but we took out man-made part, and now we're responsible for fighting climate change. So now and who cares where it comes from as long as we do something about it. I'm also, you know, one of the things that I really deeply believe after 29 days in Congress is that we need to be in the majority again. There's so many things. So tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, I will have my 3rd or 4th committee meeting on the recruitment committee for candidates. So I've got a couple recruited already for 2016. And there are not a lot of business people in either party in the Congress. So I'm now the new chair of the Business Council for the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. And I thought it was hard raising money for Congress. It's an $11 million raise, so it'll be fun and interesting. And part 2, we've done an enormous amount of work, not just the members of Congress, but the Senate and Democrats across the country about what went wrong in November. And there were a lot of different things, but I think the simplest summation of all of those is that we failed to tell our story. We did a pretty good job here in Northern Virginia in the 8th District, but people say, well, you know, it's Arlington, you know. I mean, there are more Democrats in this room than the 9th, 6th, 5th Democratic committees all combined. You know, this is such a strong place. But in most jurisdictions across the country, We failed to talk about 58 straight months of job growth, the longest in American history, 11 million new jobs since the Great Recession. No other country in the world, developed or undeveloped, has come out of the Great Recession as well as we have. We failed to talk about the 10 million new Americans that have health insurance, or the stock market that was at 6,500 when Barack Obama took office and did 18,000 last month, or just the way Affordable Care Act has kicked in to make teen pregnancies and abortions at lows we haven't seen in decades and decades. There's so much good that's going on. And one of my favorite pieces is that the healthcare cost curve is now rising more slowly since we began keeping records. There's so much good out there. And if we want to connect with all Americans, we've got to begin to tell the story about what Democrats have accomplished in the last 6 years. And then I turn to the part 3, which is, and where do we go from here? I think, and again, with lots and lots of thought from everyone here, the great challenge we have is that since, so the American economy is growing nicely, but we all have seen income inequality now that we haven't seen in many, many, many decades. And if you look at the incomes of average Americans, working class Americans, middle class Americans, they're absolutely flat in constant dollars from 1979. I mean, the charts are just like this. And that's where we can say, and by the way, the productivity chart goes like this. So the gap between the productivity American workers are adding and how they share in it is getting ever bigger. So what we have to do, to use the president's language, is jumpstart the middle class America. We have to invest in middle class economics. In his budget yesterday, the State of the Union, he laid out a very clear agenda. I won't touch on every piece of it, but it's an infrastructure bill. It's changing the way the tax code works. It's lots more investment in research and development, et cetera, et cetera. Minimum wage, changing the tipping wage, changing overtime rules. There's lots of stuff we can do. And we're going to be there fighting for it each and every day. The second big challenge is climate change. You cannot pick up the New York Times or the Washington Post any day without finding yet another frightening article about what's happening. I'm getting on the Hill and talking to my friends and colleagues who talk about the droughts in California and what it's doing to all the different crops. The spread of invasive species all across the American South and the American North. The spread of the tropical diseases now that are slowly working their way up, et cetera, et cetera. One of the saddest things I saw was a piece a week ago in the New York Times about the Pacific Asian Bank. It's 15 island countries that have come together in a banking consortium. And they say by 2030, 10 of the 15 countries will be underwater. They will lose 2/3 of their members just from sea level rise. And so once again, we've got to do everything we can. Then part 3 is something that's very close to my heart, and not just because I'm married to Megan, which is that if we're going to make this economy come alive again, we have to focus on women's economic empowerment. Every study you see from McKinsey, from Credit Suisse, from all kinds of different things says the more women are actively engaged in the economy that are paid fairly, paid equally with men, that you give them a way to do childcare so that there isn't a dead wash with what you take home, that you elevate women into positions of leadership, that you do paid family and maternity and paternity leave, then what you're going to have is an economy that grows at a significantly faster pace and much less income inequality. And once again, I'm going to fight for that as best I can. The good news about being there is there's no shortage of things to fight for. There's good things we're going to do on guns, great things we're going to do on the environment. We're on the losing side of a lot. But one of the things that I hope to take from Virginia is the idea that, Virginia has the so-called one object rule in our Constitution, that every bill will have only one object and it shall be reflected in its title. So Virginia, we don't get bills that are this tall. You get mostly 1, 2, 3 page. Is to bring that incremental approach to so many of these problems, especially climate change. You go to a major climate change bill with Republicans, not happening. But if we can get pieces of it, for example, I'm talking with a member from Portland right now about just a study on ocean acidification. We can get that going. Little by little, we can build a consensus for the big things that we have to do. I've mentioned before, I'm getting old, so I've had a chance to do a lot of different things in my life, and I feel again and again that I feel like I've been getting ready for this job my whole life. I didn't know that this is the job I was getting ready for. but it is so fulfilling and so important. I am so grateful to you for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.